Welcome back to Up North News Radio, 734 on this Thursday morning, August 8th. It's time for Women Win Wisconsin, powered by Motherhood for Good. Nicole Slavin is here, and Kate Duffy may be joining us shortly. Nicole, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great, Pat. How are you?
Good. Do I detect a little color in your face as well from yesterday's bright sunny day?
Just a little bit in a fun countryside outdoor setting in beautiful Eau Claire. Yes, Chippewa Valley was really showing off yesterday.
You came up from La Crosse for this.
Yes, I did. Yeah, it was a good day for driving probably a little faster than I needed to get there, but it all worked out in the end. I somehow magically whizzed past some of the lines of traffic. I kind of wound my way in on back roads as much as possible. And so I think I avoided the beast of traffic.
Some of the long waits that some people had. And you and I were both saying we saw afterwards so many people that we know were there, but we didn't know until we saw the Facebook posts. We have to do a meetup next time that there's something like this happening. All right, Kate Duffy, who we'd love to pick on for being a young mom and is not always on the same time schedule as everybody else because somebody is having a tantrum. Sometimes it's the mom themselves. Kate, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for your patience.
Oh, no,
I'm trying to work on not apologizing as much, but just
no, you don't have to. Again, Nicole talks about having teenagers. Mine are in their 30s and they still do things, but we have fun at all levels of the parenting scale. Is that a Motherhood for Good hat that I see on you?
Yes.
Oh, time to talk swag. Motherhood for Good on Instagram.
And also, again, mom life this morning in a rush. I'm like, I better throw a hat on. So yes, if you, like me, are running late and need to throw a hat on sometimes, we've got Motherhood for Good hats for you in the shop.
That is awesome. Well, let's see, Nicole. So you were at the rally yesterday. Any impressions that you want to share, and then we'll introduce our guest?
It was I'm an old, jaded old lady. Like, it takes a lot to knock my socks off. And I will tell you, I walked out of there dancing and singing and excited. I cried a couple of times. It's so full of hope, and the energy is contagious. And I don't know. It's something special is really happening. And it's so exciting and desperately needed. But yeah, it just feels different and so positive and exciting.
And I don't think we would have got to this point if it hadn't been for people that were laying the groundwork.
Yes.
And that really includes this morning's guest, who has brought something much more positive to the legislative caucus in terms of messaging and letting people see themselves, which would include parenting and teachers and everything else, Kate. So I'll hand it to you to introduce Deb to us.
Yes. Hello. Good morning. We're so excited to have Deb Andraca with us this morning, who is running for re-election in the 23rd Assembly District. We've been big fans of Representative Andraca for a while. She's a former Moms Demand volunteer, which is very near and dear to our hearts and many people in our community. Does so many wonderful things in the state legislature. We love watching clips of her holding Republicans' feet to the fire on the floor. It is one of our favorite things. So Deb, thank you for joining us this morning. We're so happy to talk to you.
Well, thanks for having me on today. And it's a mutual admiration society. So I love the work that you're doing. And thanks for being out there and just being moms out there. So we need a lot more of us.
Without a doubt. Can you start by telling us, because we've got new maps, of course, which everybody's good with, but it does add, even for incumbents, it adds a little extra dimension as the lines shift. So tell us about your district.
Sure. Well, my district is the 23rd, and so it's the northern Milwaukee suburbs. So that's Whitefish Bay, Fox Point, Bayside, River Hills, Brown Deer, Mequon, and Thiensville. This in 2020 was when I first ran for office. It looked a little bit different. And I was one of just 2 candidates that year to flip a district, 3 overall, myself and now Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez. And so it was tough. It was a big race. And we have seen the maps change since then. The big change that voters need to know about right now is that we finally have fair maps. And we finally have people running on maps that are competitive. So we're not just going to see 1 or 2 districts flip this year. Hopefully, we're going to see a dozen, which will completely redo what the legislature looks like and what we're able to get done.
I love that. And we keep talking about that a lot. There's so many opportunities for people to get engaged and make real impact this cycle with the Wisconsin state legislature. Sometimes with politics, it's it's like a ship. You turn 2 degrees and it takes a while to steer it. But like right now, we can actually get out there and flip the state legislature and make this happen. So can you talk to us a little bit about what you're hearing when you're out there talking to folks and what they are caring about, what they're excited about, what you're kind of planning to, take to Madison in another session?
People are so excited. They're excited about this new ticket. They're excited about our new maps. We were just looking at the state legislature for a minute. I mean, before we flipped 2 districts, it was a big deal. Now we can flip more than a dozen. But what that really means, and what I like to explain to people when they're asking me why this is such a big deal, is that there's so many issues that we know are popular with a majority of people in the state, whether that's Medicaid expansion, marijuana legalization, abortion rights, better gun laws, all of these things a majority of people want. And we've never been able to get them a public hearing, let alone a vote, just a public hearing. And if you can't have a public hearing, let the public weigh in, bring in experts, you can never reach compromise and you can't make any progress. So this week on social media, on my official side, we've launched a campaign called Never Had a Hearing. It's hashtag Never Had a Hearing, where we're highlighting some of these bills that we know people like, we know people want to see the legislature do, but they've never been able to see the light of day. And hopefully when we get a legislature that's closer to what Wisconsin actually looks like, we'll be able to have not only public hearings, but perhaps pass some of these widely popular bills.
That's such an incredible idea. And I think it goes to the fact a lot of people, particularly if you're not following, a lot in politics, you just assume this stuff is being discussed and voted on. And there's so much that has just never been touched. One of the things in particular, and I know you're passionate about, is common sense gun laws or some sort of gun reform. And I can say yesterday, that topic came up quite a bit at the rally in Eau Claire. And I think with Governor Walz, his background, he's somebody who's very like-minded with us here in Wisconsin of, yes, you have the right to hunt and, do all of those things, but there's also another side of being a responsible gun owner. So I'm curious if you're seeing anything or hopeful there that we might be able to maybe have potential to move that discussion forward a little.
Absolutely. So I ran for office partly out of my frustration in the classroom. I was working as a substitute teacher and had to go through lockdown drills. I had 2 kids in schools. They had to go through lockdown drills. And we all know the impact that had on our kids and just and needing to go through all of that day after day. It really wears on kids' mental health. And so the more I looked into it, the more I was like, well, if all of my neighbors agree that we need better gun laws and we need safer communities, why aren't we making any progress? So I called my state rep and was like, we need to do something about this. Kept talking to him. He ignored me. And so I started diving into work with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense, started bringing some volunteers to the state capitol. And I like to tell people, the more you get to know the people inside the Capitol, the more you're like, if he can do that, I can do that. So I ran to try to make a difference. Since I was elected in 2020, though, we haven't been able to have a public hearing. I know there are Republicans who agree that we need to take more, we need to do some better work on getting common sense gun laws passed, background checks on all gun sales, extreme risk protection orders. But again, they are protected because we never have public hearings, so they never have to take a tough vote. So I'm optimistic that going forward, we can get some more support once we get to public hearings and people understand. One of the reasons I'm really excited about Governor Walz is because he's a hunter. He, is a responsible gun owner. I am a gun owner. I have my concealed carry permit, but all we hear about are gun rights. We never talk about gun responsibilities. So I'm optimistic that Governor Walz can help broaden that conversation to bring people on board that common sense gun laws mean that we retain our Second Amendment rights, but we're all safer for it.
What perfect framing of rights and responsibilities. They go hand in hand. And another theme related to that is a theme around freedom. And this is something that Vice President Harris and Governor Walz have really been hitting, the freedom to be free from gun violence, the freedom to vote and not have your vote suppressed, the freedom to love and marry, the freedom to not have government interference in your exam room, the freedom to read and not have to face book bans. And Representative Andraca, I think that freedom frame is resonating with folks.
Yeah, we want people to be able to exercise their Second Amendment right. No one is trying to take that away. But at a time where firearms are the number one cause of death among children now, this is a relatively new statistic, something needs to be done. And the fact that we're continuing to ignore this in the state of Wisconsin is just abhorrent. I mean, we have seen over and over again, the data shows that states that have stronger gun laws have lower rates of gun deaths. And 60% of Wisconsin gun deaths aren't homicides, they're suicides. So there are so many different fronts to this problem, and we refuse to tackle any of them. So it's time for us to elect officials, and we can do this now with our new fair maps. We can hold our representatives accountable. So if they're campaigning on an issue and it's not getting addressed, we can finally vote them out of office because they're not protected by a gerrymander.
Yeah, and I think, Pat just talked about freedom, and what you're talking about too also relates to family values. And I think Democrats have really wonderful policies and haven't always had the best messaging to drive it home. And I'm so excited that this cycle, it's like, we're taking back freedom. We're taking back family values. These are the things of the Democratic Party, and these are what are going to help people's families. And I think I want to say something really quick on this whole kind of common sense gun reform thing, because I think a story that's been big recently is Governor Walz used to have an A rating from the NRA and used to be a bit more moderate in voting that. And he has since made, an evolution on his thoughts on gun reform, which is really, really important that we recognize that. And somebody sent me a message last night saying, one of my biggest takeaways from this is that his teenage daughter spoke up at home and changed his mind. And he is changing policy that affects so many people as a result. Never underestimate the conversations you're having, including and especially with a teenager. And I just wanted to point that out because you don't have to run for office to make change. If you're just talking to the people in your life about these things, you have no idea how far those conversations can go. Is that kind of your experience?
I can compare and contrast that with my own family. So when my kids were younger, we went to town halls with my then state rep and my then state senator, and my teenage daughter and her friends spoke up, and they were talking about lockdown drills. They were talking about the need for better gun laws. Well, what was my Republican rep's response? They stopped having town halls. So you can just see the contrast there, where one legislator says this is something we need to take seriously because kids are bringing it up, and another stops listening to kids. And so that's partly why I'm so excited just about this ticket and about just the momentum and the joy that we're all experiencing right now. Quick story, yesterday, I brought my younger daughter to cast her first vote, and she got to vote for her mom. She is so excited to cast her second vote for the first woman president of the United States. So there's just a lot of hope. There's a lot of excitement, and we're seeing that in young people. I'm seeing it. I saw it yesterday in Eau Claire on TV. I'm seeing it in my own household. So we're all full of optimism, and I just can't wait.
It really comes back to something that Joe Zepecki said in our last hour. Free advice for our Republican friends and neighbors: touch grass. Stop being online all the time and just dealing with the anger and the talking points. If you're talking to kids, if you're listening to your constituents, if you're actually outside in the real world, you're going to have a different viewpoint than if you're just in this bubble that far too many people in politics are in. Now, of course, there's also an election coming up in, next week, next Tuesday. And if we had more time, I'm sure that Representative Andraca could have a lot to say about Republicans withholding state funds, much less what they do if they could withhold federal funds, but we'll save that for another time. There's much to cover between now and Election Day. State Representative Deb Andraca, thank you so much for being part of Up North News Radio this morning.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for all the great work that you do. And let's get more moms out to vote.
Absolutely. All right, Kate, Nicole, we'll talk to you next week as well. Thanks so much for everything. Look at what they do over at Motherhood for Good. Is it motherhoodforgood.com, right?
You got it.
And Motherhood for Good on Instagram. Thanks to all of you.